YouTube fandom community, Kinks fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about the Kinks' US compilation album, Kinkdom, a well-respected man. Kinkdom. Released through, originally through Pi Records over in the UK. This is through Reprise or Reprise over here in the States. This was very much the same treatment that the Beatles and the Stones got in the United States, where it took the singles and EP tracks and album tracks and B-sides and made albums out of them over here in America. Whereas in England you had like the EP, the album, the single. A lot of times those tracks weren't mixed up. It was just, that was it, you got it. An album was 12 songs, 6 songs per side. In America, 14 in England. So, with the extra tracks here, the American record companies just made their own compilations, which I always thought was kind of cool. I'm a big fan of the US albums of the Stones and the Beatles and the Kinks. For me personally, the US Rubber Soul beats the English one hands down, but that's a whole different conversation for a different time. This album in particular is really interesting because it's a transitional album for the Kinks. It shows that they were leaving behind the hard rock, raw vibe and delving deeper into what Ray was getting into with songwriting. We're writing more about people, writing more about mundane situations and common life. Something that really hadn't been done yet and would eventually go on to inspire the whole Britpop scene in the mid-90s. This is kind of where it started. This was a whole new kind of song exploration that hadn't really been done yet. And this album kind of covers the end of the hard rock era and ushering in a few new songs from the new era. Before they'd eventually get to the next album, Face to Face, and then move on from there. This was the last American compilation put out in the States, and then after this, they just followed the original UK chronology, as it were. But this does cover the entire Quiet Kinks EP, some B-sides, a couple singles, so it kind of rounds up some tracks, mostly from '65 and then some from '64. But it charted at number 47 in the US. When it came out in November of '65. And seriously, I think it's one of my favorite Kinks albums, to be totally honest with you. It's got some great stuff on here. I wouldn't call it my favorite by far. I'd reserve that for something like Village Green, Muswell Hillbillies, Arthur. Man, Arthur's really good. Yeah, they got some good stuff. Anyways, I wanted to kind of pick apart first the track list to show where the songs came from to make this release, and then go into the common review, as you've come to know on Giggens TV. So, A Well-Respected Man and Such a Shame, those two songs were released as a single in the US, and they were also both on the Quiet Kinks EP. Wait Till Summer Comes Along was also on Quiet Kinks. Naggin' Woman was on the Kinda Kinks UK release, but not released in the Kinda Kinks American release. Never Met a Girl Like You Before is the B-side to See My Friends, and then See My Friends was an A-side single. Side 2, Who'll Be Next in Line, was the B-side of Everybody's Gonna Be Happy, which dates pretty far back on this one by this point. Don't You Fret comes off Quiet Kinks. I Need You was the B-side of Set Me Free, which is such a good song. It's Alright was the B-side of You Really Got Me, which sounds like it. And Louie Louie had been released in the States already. It came out in the King Size EP in England and the King Size LP in America. So, '65 was a crazy year for the group anyway. I mean, this was the start of the US ban, and to this day, no one's really sure what happened there. But basically, they were on tour in America, and as you know, the Kinks were the originators of the whole rock and roll, beat each other up, get banned kind of thing, well before Oasis was doing this stuff. And so I guess at one point, being on tour in Down Under in Australia, at one point Mick hit Dave with his hi-hat cymbal and knocked him out. He had to get stitches because they were having a fight on stage. So their touring unit, cohesion with each other was just already volatile. So they were knocking each other up, hitting each other up and down. And then they came across to the US and started doing a tour over here, and their tour manager bailed on them like midway through, so they were just left flowing, trying to figure out what to do. And I guess they came across, the story goes, they came across these like union guys that something came up where there was a fight or a scuffle or someone got punched, and because of that, they got banned in the US for 4 years. And that really hurt the Kinks in America because, you know, if you're not seen on TV and if you're not touring as a band, you're dead. You can put all the singles you want, hope radio plays it, but good luck. If you can't connect with your audience, that's the ball game, man. And especially 65 to 69, what a crucial time for pop music history. I mean, everything changed. Everything changed, and the Kinks weren't part of that in America, which is super sad because they're an amazing band. But they kind of got forgotten about. I mean, there's so many things that have popped up over the years where people talk about the Lola album coming out, particularly that single, and having it did so well. And people were like, oh, the Kinks are still a band? I forgot about them. Like, it had been that quick. You know, in the States, they'd only been a band for maybe 2 years tops before the band happened. So, kind of a drag when your baby don't love you. Anyways, the album starts off with the latest song, A Well-Respected Man. And this track in particular sounds nothing like most of the rest of this album because, well, I take that back. A lot of this album does have that acoustic feel, but a lot of it has that older rock and roll style feel that they had been known for. A Well-Respected Man is a very interesting track because not only does it have, you know, primarily acoustic guitars and Ray singing in a much more comfortable, light, delicate, almost accentuating his accent, his British accent, to make it sound even more British. So it's almost like an American market at that time would probably have a hard time digesting something like that because it was almost unrelatable, which would be like with the Village Green album. You know, American audiences just probably couldn't relate to it or understand it, but this track is awesome because, one, it's catchy, but two, it just highlights the mundane. You know, it basically just follows a guy through his daily shtick of going to work, going to the regatta, his normal routine. He's just going here, he's going there, he's getting lunch, he's talking to people, it's boring, but when you turn that around and make it into a song about how the everyday life thing could be an interesting song, it works. And it was so unusual at that time to have a song like that because it wasn't just the boy-girl kind of thing. It was about like just following some dude on his daily routine if you're along for the ride. It's very unusual, but it's very catchy and it's an earworm. It sticks in your head. One of their best songs in the early days, for sure. And again, it's one of those things that definitely inspired stuff in the Britpop scene. Like, I can easily see where Charmless Man from Blur came from on this one, or even Common People by Pulp. You know, it's one of those things. Not a lot of tracks like this at this time. Then you get Such a Shame, which on the back of the LP is like the third song, but they got the order wrong. Such a Shame is interesting because it's more of a somber, downtrodden track. It almost sounds like a song by the Animals. You know, it almost has that, you know, Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood kind of vibe. Or in the way Ray sings, it almost sounds Eric Burdon-like, which is pretty interesting. But it's got its own catchiness. It's got its own hook here and there. Cool drums on this track. I'll give it that. But it's not super exciting, but it definitely is something that keeps your attention. It's not like a total drag, but I think playing with that down-tempo kind of feeling gives it its own vibe that makes it slightly interesting to listen to. Not the best track they ever did, but definitely pretty cool. And then you get Wait Till the Summer Comes Along. And this must have been sung by Dave. It sounds like him. Bit of a country feel on this one. A lot of an acoustic guitar country shuffle throughout this thing with some a very clean electric guitar noodlings on top. It almost sounds like Mike Nesmith from the Monkees could have written this one. It's got that sunny optimism to it musically, but lyrically it's sad. It's about, you know, trying to get someone back. You're having the happy music with the sad lyrics is a very Beach Boys trick as well, but makes for a really cool track. I could definitely see the Monkees doing this song, and I mean that in a sincere compliment. Very cool. The addition of this song shows more of that transition time for the Kinks. Then you get Naggin' Woman, which is a blues falling down like hail kind of song, which I think is David Gunn on lead, but very B.B. King-esque guitar fills on this one. His solo styling on this one is very clean, but also very rubbery and bendy, which is very, very B.B. King-esque to do. So hearing him play like that and kind of wear his influences on his sleeve is fun to listen to. Not my favorite song on the album. Dave's voice on this one sounds exhausted, like he's just tired of this person telling him what to do or something, but not bad, not my favorite. Next track after that we get Never Met a Girl Like You Before, and again the tracks are messed up on the back here. Never Met a Girl Like You Before is really cool. This is definitely an older Kinks feel, but also a mixture of the new Kinks feel. Vocally, I'd say lyrically, it's still in the old school tradition of the older Kinks stuff, but the guitar on this is, again, more on the cleaner side, but still has that rockin' Bo Diddley-esque feel. Bo Diddley-esque feel. Which makes for an interesting transition again, because you've been used to the Kinks with All Day and All the Night. You Really Got Me, Tired of Waiting, where there's this big bombastic raw guitar. So to hear them do like a cleaner guitar and kind of use that same presentation or delivery and how they play the guitar makes, again, for them showing off what else they can do and what else is going to come up next. And then you get the See My Friends track, which is one of my favorite songs by the Kinks. What an interesting track. What a weird track. Apparently Ray wrote this when they were at a layover like in Bombay or something, and he kind of had this like mysticism moment or something, but it's very unusual and then it's very hypnotic. It's a pop song in the pop tradition, but very hypnotic and almost meditative because it repeats itself pretty often. And the way Ray sings it, the way he kind of floats above the whole thing, is very cool. And the drums on this track in particular I really like. Mick doing a lot of cymbal work and a lot of tom-tom work. Makes for something that's not supposed to be like, I guess like immediately something you dance to or crank up on the radio. It's more of like a listen to this kind of song. It's got enough of a crawling vibe to it that it sets it apart from other stuff. So once again, here comes the Kinks doing something different. And apparently it was one of Pete Townshend's favorite songs at the time, which he was a huge Kinks fan. That's why I can't explain it was written because he loved the Kinks so much. But yeah, See My Friends is definitely something that sticks out a lot for me. And in particular, I think in the early Kinks work, pre-66 Kinks. Very cool track. Something I play. I feel like if I ever made a mix of the Kinks, that would definitely be on there, hands down. Like if I was picking like the top 10 or top 15 Kinks songs, that's on there. Side 2 starts off with Who Will Be the Next in Line, and this one's cool because there's a lot of heavy piano being banged away on this one, which it sets it apart from the rest of the album because there isn't much piano on this thing. A really peppy bass. I love the drums banging away on this thing nonstop the whole time. The lyrics are a bit of a mouthful, especially the chorus, the title of this thing, Who Will Be the Next in Line. It's a lot to say, and trying to put that on top of music, it's a lot to get out. But I think that musicality of it, and I think that unusual set of words to kind of like be smashed together makes for a standout track. Not my favorite, but still interesting. Don't You Fret. This is probably one of my favorite Kinks songs. I love this song because it's got a classic vibe to it. It's got like a, I don't want to say like pub vibe where it's like, put your arm around somebody and sing along with them, but it kind of has that vibe in the beginning anyway with the acoustic part. That slow fireside, cheer you on kind of vibe. With a little bit of an not acoustic, but a little bit of an echoing organ in the distance, just enough to be like, oh, there's an organ back there. But then there's a really exciting chorus with a big build-up and thumping bass, and it builds up this big rock explosion. And then it goes back to that acoustic thing, and it repeats throughout the track like that. Very cool song construction. This was also in the Quiet Kinks EP, so this was a newer track at the time. And it's one of those songs that, like, you kind of scratch your head thinking, how the hell did they write that? Like, it's just such a cool song. But I love his vocals on this one. I love the delivery on this. And the musicianship is just so top-notch. They were really becoming exceptional players at this time. And they had been, but they were kind of not abandoning their original rock and roll roots, but they were trying something new, experimenting, seeing where else they can go, which would lead them to the next couple of albums that were just starting to set themselves apart from any band out there at that time. They were a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure. I Need You. This is an older song. It's got that You Really Got Me vibe, that riff to it. The vocals sound exactly like early Kinks with that raw delivery. It's nothing too sweet about it. It's just like in your face rock and roll. It's even got the drop out before the solo, just like You Really Got Me. So Very hooky, very catchy, big, loud, messy rock and roll. Can't go wrong with that. It's alright. It's also kind of the same thing. Awesome, fast-paced drum intro with some really nice harmonica. And right on this one sounds like a really young Robert Plant vocally, which is very cool. Because there's moments on this album, like I said earlier, he sounds like Eric Burdon, or he sounds like Ray Davies, or he sounds like an earlier Ray Davies, or he sounds like Robert Plant. His voice was kind of versatile to kind of change with the song, which works pretty well. But it's just a big party time chorus stomper of a track. Very fun. Lots of wild moments. Crazy drumming on this thing as well. Cool song. And then ends with Louie Louie, which, I mean, it's been done to death. Everyone has done Louie Louie at some point. Their version's pretty cool. They take more of a chill vibe to it. It still rocks, but it's definitely more of a kind of crawling kind of vibe, which it works. Not my favorite song, but it's pretty cool. There are a couple different versions of the cover of this thing. This happens to be just a standard mono 1965 reprise or reprise, however you want to say it, records copy, where it just says a well-respected man. There's also the Pittman pressing, which is a Columbia Records pressing plant that lists all the songs in between Kinks and Kinkdom, which I don't know if that's hard to find or not, but I've never actually come across it. This is the only time I've ever seen this album was when I got this a handful of years ago, whenever it was. But very cool. This has some dude's information in the back. There's a little, remember those things you can like type in your name and number and you press a button and it fires out, it's a sticker and you put it on stuff? I forget what they were called. Label maker. Aha, label maker. That's the word. Well, this gentleman in 1965 decided to put his name on here, and a very early American phone number is on this thing. It's basically party line style. So, might be alright to show, but just for the heck of it, I'll cover his name up for privacy. But this is the back of it. Kinkdom gives you a synopsis of what it's like to live in Kinkdom. I'll read it for you because it's pretty interesting. Kinkdom is a land populated exclusively by mods who wear shoulder-length hair which droops, boots, guitars who twang, and baby doll eyes which turn you on and on and on. Inhabitants of this land have to go dancing every night except Monday. Mondays, they are all busy repairing their discotheques. The national heroes of this land are named Pete, Ray, Mick, and Dave. This land's national anthems are heard in this very thumping, very 1,000-watt album. It is a land entirely free from waltzes, acne, grinds, anemia, eggplant, curfews, alarm clocks, violins, loneliness, diets, makeup exams, squares, calluses, and losers. It is a land so wild, so fantastic, so far out, that even Rand is scared to tell McNally. Kinkdom by the Kinks. I really enjoy this album. It's a heck of a lot of fun. Definitely some good early Kinks. Mid transition into what became the Village Green era. I'd give this thing probably a 7 or 8 out of 10. Maybe a really heavy 7 because it's bordering on 8. But I think if there were a couple different tracks on here, it would make for a more solid listen. It's a bit random because you get some of that Kinks of old and Kinks of new, so it's kind of all over the place. But it works for an album. You kind of forget where you went by the time you get to the end of it. I would have taken off Louie Louie. It does nothing for me, really. But beyond that, I'd say 7 or 8 out of 10. It's solid. Definitely worth a listen for sure. If you find a copy, pick it up. It's a lot of fun. It's got some good stuff on it. And, you know, if you're collecting the US copies of stuff, you want this for your collection. So that's it. My name is Giggens. This has been the Kinks. A well-respected man, Kinkdom, on Reprise or Reprise Records, 1965. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Giggens, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.